A carton of milk slipped from Elena's hands. It hit the floor, burst open, and spread in a slow, white pool. She froze. Footsteps thudded from the back. Carl pushed through the swinging door, jaw tight, eyes locked on her. "If you drop one more thing," he snapped, loud enough for the whole café to hear, "I'll cut your hours down to 2 shifts, just enough to starve, without letting you quit." No one moved. A man sitting in the back corner didn't flinch. His coffee sat untouched, cooling. His name was Jackson, but today they called him Lou. He didn't blink. He had seen enough, and what he saw wasn't just spilled milk, it was everything that had gone wrong, right in front of him. He wasn't supposed to get involved, but after this morning, he knew. He wouldn't be leaving quietly. Jackson stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The glasses were thick-rimmed. The beard slightly off color. The coat, 2 sizes too big, zipped to his chin. It wasn't a perfect disguise, but it didn't need to be. He adjusted the collar. "Lou," he muttered under his breath. The name felt unfamiliar, but safe. He hadn't used an alias in years, not since the company was small enough for him to know every name on the payroll. Now, most employees wouldn't recognize him. That was the point. He took a slow breath, the kind you take when you're not sure what you're about to walk into. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple despite the cold. This wasn't just a check-in. He came here for answers, but something told him. He was about to find more than that. He remembered the first one. Just a corner cafe, brick walls, a second-hand espresso machine that hissed louder than it brewed. Jackson used to open every morning, apron on, hands steady. He knew every regular's name and their order before they spoke. There was a man named Pete who always tipped in coins, a woman who brought her dog and stayed until noon. He didn't mind. He smiled more back then. The drinks weren't perfect, but the place felt honest, alive. That was before the expansion, before investor calls and policy manuals. He blinked, and the memory faded. Now there were 7 stores, dozens of employees, a corporate team he barely knew by name. Somewhere along the way, that small cafe feeling disappeared. And maybe, he thought, that was the real reason he was here. Not just to find out what went wrong, but to remember what it used to feel like when it was still his. Jackson scrolled through the latest internal report on his phone. Sales were solid. No major drops. Numbers looked clean. Almost too clean. But buried in the comments section were signs he couldn't ignore. Staff seemed cold. Something felt off. He used to love this place, not anymore. He'd seen a pattern like this before. Good revenue hiding bad culture. It didn't add up. A place that performed well on paper, but left people uneasy. That was the problem. Culture didn't show up in spreadsheets. You felt it in the room, in how a barista smiled, or didn't, in how long a regular stayed, in how often someone quit without warning. Jackson looked up from the screen, jaw tight. He didn't trust perfect numbers anymore, not when the people behind them were invisible. The mile roast on South Ash used to feel alive. Now it felt paused. Only 3 customers sat scattered across the room. No one spoke. No one smiled. Chairs scraped the floor louder than the music. The playlist was still the same. Soft acoustic, but turned down so low it barely filled the space. Lights buzzed overhead. A drip of water tapped from the sink behind the counter. No one moved to fix it. Jackson stepped inside. The smell was right. Coffee, cinnamon, faint hints of vanilla syrup. But the energy was wrong. He glanced toward the register. A barista wiped the counter with slow, mechanical motions. Another folded sleeves behind the pastry case, staring blankly ahead. Nobody looked up. Jackson stood still for a beat. The place hadn't changed on the surface, but something underneath it had gone quiet. Elena noticed him first. She straightened quickly, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "Good morning," she said, voice soft but clear. "What can I get started for you?" Her name tag was crooked. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Jackson gave a small nod. "Just a black coffee, medium." She tapped the screen and repeated the order. Name? He hesitated. Lou. Behind her, a shadow moved in the back hallway. Carl. He glanced toward the counter but didn't stop. No nod, no greeting. Just a quick scan, and then gone. Elena didn't react. She simply turned to prepare the drink, hands steady but careful, as if she'd learned not to draw attention. Jackson watched in silence. She was polite, professional, but beneath that, something in her posture said, "Stay small, stay safe." Elena looked up again. "Name for the cup?" she asked, pen in hand. Jackson paused, then said, "Lou, with an S." She gave a small nod and scribbled it quickly. No questions, no reaction. He watched her pour the coffee. No wasted movements, no small talk. She slid the cup across the counter like she'd done it 100 times that morning. "Medium black, for Lou, with an S," she said quietly. He took it, thanked her with a nod, and moved to a table near the far window. He didn't sip the drink. Instead, he held the cup in both hands, feeling the warmth fade, watching her from the corner of his eye. There was nothing wrong with the service, but something in the silence lingered too long, and Jackson knew this wasn't just about coffee. It hadn't been for a while. The door to the back swung open again. Carl stepped out, voice already raised. "Elena!" he barked. "How many times do I have to say it? Move faster. This isn't a daycare." She flinched. Not a lot, just enough to notice. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes down. "No excuses," Carl snapped, cutting her off. "Speed it up or step out. I don't care which." The café fell quiet again. Even the customers at the window stopped mid-sip. Jackson didn't move. He sat still, one finger tracing the rim of his cup, eyes fixed on the interaction. Carl didn't lower his voice. He didn't check who was listening, because he thought no one would speak. That was the problem. He'd gotten used to being the loudest voice in the room. From his seat, Jackson could see the back hallway. A young man in a faded apron stepped out, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Marcus." He moved slowly, favoring his right leg. Carl's voice echoed from behind. "You done already? We don't pay for standing around." Marcus spoke low, almost apologetic. "I just need a quick break. Been on my feet since 6. Carl didn't look at him. "If you're that tired, don't bother coming in tomorrow. We'll cut your shift." Marcus froze for a second, then nodded. He didn't argue, just turned, head down, and disappeared back into the kitchen. Jackson watched the entire thing unfold. No raised voices, no slurs, no threats on paper. Just quiet control. The kind that never shows up in reports, but it's there. In every unpaid break, in every shift taken away because someone asked for less pain. Near the register, Tanya leaned forward to help a customer, an older woman with hesitant English. She spoke gently in Spanish, repeating the order to make sure it was right. The woman smiled, relieved. But Carl wasn't far. He stepped in fast, voice sharp. "Tanya, English. This is America. You work in English." Tanya blinked. She didn't understand. "I said what I said." Carl cut her off. "Next time, send her to someone else." The customer's face fell. She took her drink and left without a word. Tanya stayed quiet, her jaw locked, hands trembling slightly as she cleaned the counter. Jackson's fingers curled around his cup. It wasn't just rude, it was something deeper. A line being crossed, casually, repeatedly. He didn't need a handbook to know what that moment meant. He just needed to remember it. Jackson stayed in his seat. He didn't take notes, didn't speak, just watched. The table in front of him stayed empty, except for the untouched cup of coffee. His eyes moved slowly, from Marcus limping to Tanya's clenched jaw to Elena counting change twice before handing it over. None of it was loud, but all of it said the same thing. This team wasn't just tired, they were afraid. At first, Jackson had walked in curious, wanting to understand what changed. Now, his jaw was set, shoulders stiff, his hand rested flat on the table, fingers still. There was anger now, not explosive, not theatrical, but cold, Controlled. The kind that comes when you see something wrong and realize it's not new. It's just been allowed to stay. Tanya brought over a napkin and wiped the edge of Jackson's table. She didn't have to. It was already clean. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said quietly, then paused. Her voice dropped even lower. "You're the first customer who's asked if I'm okay." Jackson looked up, just slightly. Tanya smiled, but it was tight, tired. The kind of smile you wear when you've trained yourself not to show too much. Most people don't notice, or they don't want to. She didn't wait for a response, just turned and walked back behind the counter. Jackson watched her go. He didn't say anything, but the words stayed with him, not because they were dramatic, not because they were loud, but because they were honest, and no one had thought to ask her, until now. As the rush slowed, Jackson stood and approached the counter. Elena glanced up, surprised. He kept his voice low. "Do you have 5 minutes? Outside? Just to talk?" She hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the back where Carl had just disappeared again. Jackson didn't push. "It's nothing formal," he added. "I'd just appreciate your honesty." Elena's hands tightened on the edge of the counter. Then she nodded, almost too quickly. They stepped out through the side door into the small staff lot. The air was cooler now. A breeze moved through the alley. She folded her arms across her chest, waiting. Jackson watched her for a second, then spoke carefully. "I've been sitting here all morning, watching, listening." Elena stayed silent. Jackson's tone lowered, and I think you already know why. Jackson leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets. "Have you reported anything?" he asked, voice calm. Elena looked away. "I emailed HR 2 months ago." He waited. Let the silence sit. "No one replied," she added. "Not even an automated message?" Jackson's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Elena glanced at him. "I thought maybe it didn't go through. I sent it again. Still nothing." Her voice didn't crack, but it thinned, like someone who'd stopped expecting answers. "I just wanted someone to know what was happening. I didn't think it would fix everything." She paused. "I just didn't want to feel invisible." Jackson met her eyes for the first time. "You're not," he said. "Not anymore." But deep down, he knew. This wasn't just about one manager. It was about a system that had stopped listening. Elena pulled out her phone, thumb hovering for a second before unlocking it. "I still have the email," she said. She scrolled slowly, then turned the screen toward Jackson. The subject line was short. "Harassment concern, urgent. Sent 2 months ago. Time-stamped. Marked read. No reply." Below it, another, same title, same body, sent 3 days later. Still no response. Jackson stared at the screen. No attachments, no formatting, just words. Clear, direct. Quietly written by someone who didn't want to cause trouble but needed to be heard. Elena lowered the phone. "I wasn't trying to get anyone fired. I just wanted to feel safe showing up." Jackson nodded once. He didn't take a picture. He didn't ask for more. The message had already said enough, and the silence after it said even more. Jackson didn't speak on the way back to his car. He slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and sat still for a moment. Then he opened his laptop. The screen lit up with rows of internal dashboards. HR logs, scheduling software, exit surveys. He cross-referenced the cafe's recent turnover. 3 baristas had quit in the last 8 weeks, 2 of them after less than a month. He pulled up revenue. Sales were holding steady, slightly above average, which meant fewer people were doing more work, and no one upstairs was asking why. He opened the HR inbox from his corporate access. No flagged issues, no active cases for this location. Just noise. Filters, missed signals buried under clean charts. Jackson leaned back. This wasn't a people problem, it was a visibility problem, and now that he'd seen it, he couldn't unsee it. Jackson returned later that afternoon. No disguise this time, no more distance. He pulled Marcus aside first, quietly. away from the others. "Has anything ever felt off?" he asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Since day one," he said, "but I needed the job." Next was Tanya. She folded her arms before speaking. "He said my accent made customers uncomfortable, told me not to show too much personality." She didn't blink as she said it. Then Elena. Her voice was lower now, flat. "He watches the cameras when he's not on the floor, times our breaks. Once I sat down for 30 seconds and he made me mop the back room." Jackson listened. No clipboard, no recorder, just silence between stories. One thread at a time, weaving into something bigger. None of them asked who he really was, but all of them knew he wasn't just a customer anymore. Marcus sat on a milk crate behind the kitchen, legs stretched, arms resting on his knees. Jackson crouched nearby, keeping his voice low. "Has Carl ever blocked you from doing your job?" Marcus gave a dry laugh. "He's locked the fridge on me before," he said. "Not by accident." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Prep fridge. Back corner. He says if I can't do setup fast enough, I don't deserve access." Marcus shook his head. "So I go into service without anything ready. Then he yells that I'm slowing the team down." Jackson stayed quiet, absorbing it. "That way," Marcus added, "he always gets to say I failed. Doesn't matter what I do." It wasn't just pressure. It was control, measured, rehearsed, strategic. The kind that doesn't show up in policy manuals, but it leaves marks just the same. Tanya leaned against the break room counter, arms crossed tight. "There was a girl named Janelle," she said. "She worked mornings. Soft voice. Always early." Jackson nodded, listening. "One customer said they couldn't understand her, said her accent was too thick." She paused. "Carl pulled her off the floor mid-shift, said she made the store look unprofessional." Jackson said nothing. "She went into the bathroom, stayed in there for half an hour. I could hear her crying." Tanya looked down. "She didn't come back after that. No one asked where she went, not even HR." The silence stretched between them. It wasn't just a bad moment, it was a wound. One that stayed hidden in quiet corners and closed doors. Jackson felt it settle heavy in his chest. Some stories didn't need proof. They carried their own weight. Elena sat on the back steps, arms wrapped around her knees. Jackson took a seat beside her, saying nothing. After a moment, she spoke. "Carl once told me that if I reported him, no one would believe me." Her voice was steady, but flat. "He said I was just the backup girl. Said people like me come and go." Jackson looked over. "I asked what he meant," she added. "He said, 'You don't matter enough to stir anything up.'" She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. It wasn't new. It was rehearsed, stored somewhere she'd tried to bury. Jackson felt the weight of her words. Not just what Carl said, but how easily he said it. How confident he was that the system would protect him. And worse, how long it had. Jackson turned slightly toward her. "I need something concrete," he said. "Anything I can take upstairs." Elena didn't answer right away. Then she unlocked her phone, opened an old group chat, and scrolled. "I kept this," she said, holding the screen out. A photo filled the display. A crate of milk cartons stacked in the walk-in fridge. Each one clearly past its expiration date. Taped on the side was a sticky note in thick black marker. "Use first, don't tell." Below the image, a message from a former coworker read, "Carl said if we tossed it, it'd come out of our checks." Jackson took the phone, studied the timestamp. It was from 3 months ago. Elena didn't say anything more. She didn't have to. Some things didn't need explanation. Just a screen, a date, a truth finally seen. Later that day, Jackson sat in his car with the windows cracked. He pulled out a small recorder, plugged in a wired mic, and slid an earpiece into place. No drama, no hesitation, just a quiet decision. He walked back into the cafe, ordered another drink, and waited. Carl emerged from the back, muttering about a schedule mix-up. Jackson approached casually. "Hey, quick question," he said. "What's the deal with breaks? Seemed like some folks weren't getting one." Carl didn't flinch. "If they move slow, they don't need a break," he said. "You want hours, you work." Jackson nodded slowly. Carl kept going, louder now. Complaints about lazy staff, soft hires, and how no one lasts unless they're tough. The recorder captured every word. Jackson stayed calm, sipping his coffee. He wasn't here to argue. He was here to listen and build a record no one could ignore. The next morning, a delivery truck backed into the alley behind the café. Jackson was already there, standing near the dumpster pretending to check his phone. A young driver rolled up the back door. "Double order today," he said, glancing at a clipboard. "No invoice, just a text from Carl." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Text?" The driver held out his phone. Sure enough, Carl's name, time-stamped from the night before. "Bring it early. Pay in cash. No need to log." The driver pulled out crates, milk, syrups, frozen breakfast wraps, all stacked and sealed. Jackson stepped closer. "You paid already?" "Nah," the guy said. "Carl said he'd settle in cash this afternoon." Jackson nodded slowly, then took a quick photo of the crates and the message. No system record, no approval, just inventory arriving in silence, off the books and out of sight. Something wasn't just broken, it was being used. Jackson stepped forward and took the delivery clipboard from the driver. "I'll sign for it," he said calmly. The young man hesitated, then shrugged. "Whatever works." Jackson scribbled a fake signature, accepted the folded cash receipt, and snapped a quick photo of it with his phone, time, date, and Carl's text all captured. Then he wheeled the crates inside himself. No one questioned it. Inside the walk-in, he stacked the milk cartons and syrup bottles neatly, then pulled up the internal inventory system on his phone. No pending orders. No restock alerts. He opened the most recent supply log. Everything checked out on paper, too clean. He took a full set of photos, labels, expiration dates, quantities, then backed out, locking the fridge behind him. He didn't need a confrontation. He needed a timeline, a hole in the numbers, and now he had both, what was on paper and what had just been slipped around it. Jackson stood by the counter, sipping the last of his coffee. It had gone cold hours ago. Carl wandered over, wiping his hands on his apron. "You still here?" he asked, tone casual but clipped. "We close soon." Jackson looked up slowly. His voice was calm, too calm. "I'll be back tomorrow." Carl raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? Gonna make this your new hangout spot?" Jackson set the empty cup down. "Not as a customer." Carl blinked, caught off guard. But Jackson had already turned away, walking toward the door. No big scene, no loud reveal, just one line that shifted the entire ground beneath them. Outside, the sun was already dipping low. Tomorrow would be different. Carl didn't know it yet, but his time was running out. The next morning, the cafe lights flickered on just past 6. Steam hissed softly from the espresso machine. Early prep buzzed low and tired. The door chimed once. Jackson stepped in, no disguise, no hesitation. Just a dark coat, pressed shirt, and eyes that didn't scan the menu. Elena looked up from the pastry case and froze. Tanya paused mid-pour. Marcus lowered a mop. Silence. One by one, they recognized him. Not the man from the day before, but the one from the company newsletter. The founder. The name on every paycheck. Carl wasn't in yet. But his shadow suddenly felt smaller. Jackson didn't speak. He didn't have to. The way he stood, the way the air shifted, it said everything. This wasn't a mystery anymore. This was the beginning of an answer. Elena stood frozen, pastry tongs in hand, her eyes locked on Jackson. No glasses, no beard. Just him, the man behind the company. She didn't speak. Her breath caught somewhere in her chest. Behind her, footsteps approached. Carl emerging from the back with a clipboard and a half-formed complaint already on his tongue. Then he saw him. He stopped mid-step. The color drained from his face. For a second, no one moved. Carl's chest rose fast as if the air had turned thin. His hand tightened around the clipboard, knuckles paling. Jackson didn't flinch. He held Carl's stare, quiet and steady. The weight of recognition landed. Carl didn't speak. Couldn't. No one had told him the boss was coming. And now, the boss didn't need to say a word. Jackson took one slow step forward. Carl didn't move, just stared, blinking hard, as if trying to place a dream. Jackson reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the old glasses. Then, slowly, the fake beard. He held them in his hands like something no longer needed. "Do you know who I am now?" His voice was calm, almost quiet, but it hit like thunder. Carl's mouth parted slightly, no words forming. Behind the counter, Elena's breath caught. Tanya let a cup clink too hard into the sink. Marcus leaned against the wall, eyes wide. The café fell still, utterly silent. The man they thought was a quiet, tired stranger had just unmasked himself. Not just a customer. The founder. The owner. Jackson didn't need to say more. The room had already answered for him. Jackson's voice didn't rise. "Outside. Now." Carl hesitated, still holding the clipboard like a shield. But something in Jackson's tone left no room. They stepped through the back door into the cold alley. The silence lasted one breath too long. "I heard everything," Jackson said, eyes locked on him. "I saw how you speak to them, how you run this place." Carl opened his mouth, searching for spin, for excuse. But Jackson cut him off. "You don't belong in this company." Carl's jaw tightened. "No." Jackson's voice hardened. "You're done. You will not step inside that store again." Carl's shoulders sagged, deflating under the weight of it. Jackson stepped back. "Leave now." There was no yelling, just the kind of silence that follows a locked door, and a line that would not be crossed again. When Jackson stepped back inside, the cafe was still. No music, no chatter, just breath held. Elena stood by the register, eyes glistening. She turned away, wiping quickly, not wanting to be seen. Marcus, startled by the sudden shift in weight, dropped a ceramic cup. It shattered on the tile, but no one flinched. Tanya didn't speak. She looked up, met Jackson's eyes, and gave the faintest nod. Not of surprise, but relief. One nod meant everything. They had been heard, seen, defended. Carl was gone. No one clapped, no one cheered. It wasn't celebration, it was a shift. A silence no longer held by fear. Something had broken. And something else, something steady, was finally beginning. The team gathered in the break room, still unsure what came next. Jackson stood near the counter, no suit, no distance. Just hands in his pockets, shoulders a little heavier than before. "I owe you all an apology," he began. "I should have been here. I should have seen it sooner." No one interrupted. No one needed to. "I built this place to be different," he said quietly, "but somewhere along the way, I let it run without listening." Tanya looked down. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on knees. Elena blinked fast, arms crossed tightly. Jackson took a slow breath. "I'm not here to fix everything in one day, but I'm not walking away again." It wasn't a speech. It was a reckoning. And this time, it started with him. The next morning, Clara arrived just after dawn. Mid-30s, denim apron. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. Her steps were quiet but confident. Jackson greeted her with a nod. "Thanks for coming." She looked around the space, pausing at the corners, reading the room. Not judging, just seeing. "I'm not here to bark orders," she said plainly to the team. "I'm here to keep things moving and to listen. No buzzwords, no showmanship, just presence." When Marcus asked about breaks, she answered clearly. When Tanya hesitated on a shift question, Clara sat beside her, not across. Respect was felt more than said. She wasn't there to save the day, she was there to hold the line, while others learned to rise again. Jackson set up a small table in the back hallway, 2 chairs and a notepad. No formal setup, just quiet space. One by one, team members came to sit across from him. He didn't interrupt, he didn't push. He asked only once, What's been happening here? From your eyes. Marcus spoke first, then Tanya, then Elena again, this time with more strength in her voice. Jackson wrote everything down. No laptop clicks, just pen to paper, names, incidents, times, patterns. By afternoon, the folder was thick. He slipped it into a larger envelope, sealed it, then walked it to Clara. "This goes directly to compliance," he said. "No middlemen, no delays." Clara nodded, her eyes steady. "I'll handle it." It wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was documentation. And finally, it was being seen. Clara returned from the back, holding a folded delivery slip in one hand and a carton in the other. "No invoice, just this," she said, setting them on the counter. Jackson opened the slip. Handwritten. No company stamp, no digital trail. Then he turned to the milk carton. A neon pink sticky note clung to the side. Black ink, smudged. "Use first, don't tell." His stomach sank. He checked the expiration date. 2 weeks passed. He took a photo of the note, the carton, the slip. 3 angles. No room for denial. The weight of the abuse wasn't just verbal, it was physical, liquid. Served to customers who trusted this brand. Jackson didn't say a word. He just nodded once, slowly, and walked straight to Clara. "Full inventory audit. Start now." Later that afternoon, Jackson called Elena into the office. She stepped in carefully, unsure if she'd done something wrong. But Jackson smiled. Not politely, but with quiet certainty. "I need your help," he said. She blinked. "Mine?" He nodded. "We're rebuilding our internal training handbook, not from the top down, this time from the floor up, from people who've lived it." He slid a notebook across the desk. Inside, a draft title, "Working with Respect, Ground-Level Practices." "I want you on the writing team. Your voice matters here." Elena looked down at the cover, then back up. Her hands shook, just slightly. "You really mean that?" she asked. "I do," Jackson replied. "Starting now." For the first time in weeks, she smiled. Small, real, not because things were perfect, but because someone had just handed her the pen. A handwritten sign hung on the front door. "Closed 2-3 p.m. daily for team reset. Thank you for understanding." Inside, the café was quiet, but not empty. The lights stayed on. Music played low. Dishes were cleared. Aprons untied. At the center table, Elena passed around homemade sandwiches. Marcus laughed at something Tanya said. Clara poured coffee like it was her first shift. No meetings, no agendas. Just lunch. Together. No one looked at the clock. Jackson sat nearby, hands wrapped around a warm mug, listening more than speaking. This wasn't policy, it was rhythm. 1 hour to breathe, to sit, to check in, not as employees, but as people. And though customers waited outside, watching the sign. Inside, something else was opening. Trust, and the quiet kind of culture you couldn't fake. The door chimed softly mid-afternoon. A man in a wheelchair rolled in slowly, scanning the café with quiet hesitation. He wore the same brown jacket, the same guarded look. Months ago, Carl had asked him to leave, said he was blocking the aisle, made it seem like policy. This time, Tanya spotted him first. She stepped forward with a warm smile. "We've got space ready for you." Marcus slid a table gently aside, clearing a smooth path. Elena brought over a fresh cup of water without being asked. "No rush," she said gently. "Stay as long as you like." The man nodded, voice caught in his throat. He eased into the open space, hands resting quietly on his lap. No apology was spoken aloud, but every gesture said it. "You're welcome here. This is your table too. And this time, we mean it." From across the café, Jackson stood quietly near the window, watching. Elena was guiding a new hire, maybe 19, maybe nervous, through the steps of the closing shift. Her voice was clear, calm, measured, not rushed, not apologetic. She pointed out small things, how to label syrups, where to find the extra filters, how to check the date on the milk. The new hire nodded quickly, trying to keep up. Elena smiled. "Don't worry, you'll get it. It's more rhythm than rules." Jackson didn't step in. Didn't need to. He saw it in the way she moved now. Shoulders back, hands steady, eyes sure. Not just someone surviving the job, someone owning it. She hadn't been promoted with a title, but something far better had happened. She had grown into the space they once made her shrink inside, and now she was showing someone else the way forward. Clara stepped out from the back office, clipboard in hand, brows slightly raised. "There's another store," she said. "North Side location. Same symptoms. Staff turnover, silence, no formal complaints, but—" Jackson looked up from his coffee, listening closely. "They need someone to show up," she finished. He nodded once without hesitation. "Go," he said. "And if there's an Elena there, listen to her. Build around her." Clara smiled, eyes tired but steady. "Got it." She turned towards the door, already dialing someone on her phone. Jackson stayed seated, but something in him moved again. Not restlessness, readiness. The fight wasn't over, it was just spreading. One café fixed wasn't enough. Not until every one of them felt like a place worth walking into. Jackson stood at the far end of the café, quiet. The morning rush had just passed. Light streamed through the window, soft and still. On the coat rack by the door hung a new uniform, clean, pressed, waiting. Stitched over the left chest in simple thread, "You matter here." He didn't touch it, didn't need to. The message wasn't for him. It was for every hand that clocked in, every voice once ignored, every silent shift endured. No music played, no lines were spoken, just the hum of machines and the steady rhythm of a place beginning again. If you've ever been mistreated at work, leave a dot in the comments. We'll see you. That was all. No branding, no credits. Just recognition and room to be heard. Thank you for watching.